Pivot tables are powerful and flexible Excel analysis tools. A pivot table lets you rearrange, sort, and filter a data set on the fly, so you can analyze it from several different perspectives with a minimum of effort. In this movie, I will show you how to create a pivot table from an Excel table that's stored in the same workbook. My sample file is create0103, and you can find it in the Chapter 1 folder of your exercise files collection. This workbook contains a single worksheet, and that holds an Excel table. And you can see that I have details for orders. Those include the customer's full name, their state, date of purchase, and so on. If I want to create a pivot table from this Excel table, then I click any cell in the pivot table so it's selected. And then on the Insert tab of the ribbon, in the Tables group at the far left, I click Pivot Table. Doing so selects the table, and the Create Pivot Table dialog box appears. In this case, I want to select a table or range, and it has correctly identified that I want to use Table 1, which is the name of my table. You can see that in the name box at the top left corner. I could if I want to use an external data source, but we'll save that for another movie. Now I can choose where I want the pivot table to be placed. My preference is to always put a pivot table on its own worksheet. That allows you to expand and contract the pivot table without worrying about the source data. You can always look at the source data if you want to, but I prefer to have a clean canvas to work with. So I'll leave New Worksheet selected, although I could put it on an existing worksheet. One option that I won't use right now, but I will elsewhere in the course, is add this data to the data model. The data model is a fairly advanced topic, so I'll leave it for later. The one thing I should note is that if you add a table to the data model, then you are not able to create calculated fields. So any data that isn't in your original table that you're working with can't be included in the pivot table. I want to show you how to create a calculated field later, so for now, we'll leave this checkbox unselected. I'll click OK, and I get a new worksheet with my new pivot table. You can see the blank pivot table here on the left, and on the right is the pivot table fields task pane. In that task pane is a set of all of the fields, and these correspond one-to-one to the columns from the original data source. Let's say that I want to create a pivot table that has states as my row headers and category as my column headers, and then the values, or the amount of the sales, total sales, as the values for the body of the pivot table. To do that, I can drag the state field from the field list to the rows area. And you can see that my row labels are now the states, and those are in column A. Now I can put category in the columns area, so I'll drag that down. So there I have batteries, grid tie inverters, and so on. And finally, for values, in this case, I want to have total price. Unit price is the price of each individual item, for example, a light bulb, a specific solar panel, and so on. Total price is the amount of each order. So I will drag total price to values, and there you see I have my pivot table. Now that you've learned how to create a pivot table, you can move forward and discover how to rearrange your data dynamically.